Previously on For the Culture.
That with that experience of oppression with the Polish, when they got on the island and started fighting, they realized that the Haitians are not just fighting to
Mm,
fight. They realized they're fighting for their freedom.
Now for part two.
But also, like, a lot of people don't know that Haiti was part of World War II. Before World War II, there was the first Cocoa War, and there was a second Cocoa War. So the Cocoa War was during the Americans occupied between 1915 to 1935. They occupied Haiti in part due to fear of Germans' influence in Haiti and the Caribbean in
oh,
general. Um, Germans were controlling the money, the banks, a lot of them, although there was so little of them in terms of population wise,
They had a lot of influence
a lot of
power-wise.
influence power wise, and also taking over the ports, right?
Mm,
Who controls the ports controls the money,
the
right?
money, yes.
What's going in and what's going out, right? And uh so in the US they were making it out to be like they're there to help Haiti, but they were really there because of the fear of the Germans. And the Germans, one of the workaround they would do is they would purposely, because in the Haitian Revolution you cannot own land if you're a foreigner, right? Because anything that has to do, or even a minute chance of creating oppression, you weren't allowed. So
Okay.
the Germans were doing is they were marrying Haitian women.
So that they could own
They could
land.
own some land. So that was like a whole thing. So now here comes the US occupying Haiti, telling the people in America, like, no, we're there to help Haiti, but really they were there to try to take over the money, right? So to take over control and the money that the Germans were slowly gaining,
Gaining, got
right?
you.
So when the American occupied Haiti, there were two rebellions that are the wars. There were the Cocoa Wars, which were basically Haitian guerrilla fighters that were known as Cacos,
Okay.
and they were against basically any form of occupation, specifically the occupation of Americans.
Okay.
So that's where Caco were actually the fighters. And so the first one was the first Caco War, was in 1915, where American forces, mostly Marines,
Okay.
in were trying to invade Haiti, but
Uh-huh.
they were defeated by the Caco forces, and
Okay.
the Caco took control of the nation. So
Okay.
some of the Haitians that joined that war were told that they would get money if they won, or some land. And I know that
Oh,
I
okay.
have some ancestors, I think on my dad's side, he has gained land by joining that war.
Oh, so
And
is it the Germans promised the Haitians that they would get land if they fought against the Americans?
it was the rebellions, the freedom fighters, really, the Caco fighters were like, hey, if we kick not just the Germans out, but also the
Gotcha.
Haitians, sorry, the Americans that are trying to invade Haiti, we're gonna pay you in either in money or land, or both, right?
Or inland.
So
Okay.
a lot of Haitians, that's how they started gaining some land, because of those, not just the first Caco War, but also the
The
second.
second one.
There was a second one between 1918 to 1920. Again, that was more against the occupations of American. And
Gotcha.
I remember my grandmother telling me stories of, like, when the Marines were there, they did so much fishing. They remember, like boats loads of, like, they were just taking away so many resources, because
Mm.
there was like there was cocoa, there was a lot of cocoa trees, there was coffee on that island, there was a lot of fishing on that island, and they just basically nearly, in a way, did eradicate a lot of the lands. It was a flourishing land where you can farm easily, and now it's tougher. And that was by the Americans, who just kind of
Mm.
took a lot of the natural resources in Haiti.
So, in a nutshell, when anyone is asking why is Haiti so poor, well, first of all, they got their independence really early before they could be civilized in terms of like
Right.
infrastructure and all of those things. They were not waiting for all of that to happen because that would mean that they had to work harder and be put in these very bad situations. And then secondly, we had all these different countries or whoever wanted to come and take what they wanted, basically took what they wanted and suck the country dry. So
They sucked the
they,
country dry, and we're gonna rewind just a little bit. We're gonna go back to like what we said with Napoleon. So
Mhm.
they defeated Napoleon not one but two boats. Now,
Mm,
and they've been in so many because you know we joked around, but we said, man, Haitians are were in a lot of wars. They were, but being in so many wars and also participating and helping other countries created for a lot losing a lot of men.
that's
And
true.
so by that time of losing so many, France were thinking of resending some more. And so
Mm.
Haiti had to kind of like, no, we can't. We're gonna lose. We can't do this.
Got you. So they had to kind of surrender in a
They
way.
had to surrender, and they said, okay, well, to make up for all the loss that we have had because of your revolution, you pay a ransom, like they basically blackmailed Haiti. And
For
for
the damage
years,
they caused.
for yeah, because they're like, well, you guys did a lot of damage from what you've been doing, and so if you don't want us to send some more men to fight you, then you pay a
Oh,
fine, right?
that's where that came from. This is
It's
making me like low key.
1825, yeah.
I am so upset. Okay, so everybody, this is why I think educating yourself is very important. So when everyone wants to talk about how poor Haiti is, because I remember growing up, going to school as well, and I always got mad with my teachers because whenever they wanted to use an example of poverty, they always went to Haiti. It's the same for even North America. We would go to Africa and use them as an example, completely ignoring the poverty we have in our own backyard, right?
Yeah.
So I would always say to the teachers, well, yes, but the Haiti I know, I don't see any poverty. I see resilient people who, beyond everything, they persevere. But you need to address the reason they are poor. Tell the kids why they are poor, because that was one of the reasons people would get teased if you were of Haitian descent. And I believe that's why a lot of us grow up. If you don't have parents that are very rooted in their Haitian culture, you're kind of
Right.
ashamed to say that you are Haitian because everyone associates you to all these things that they have on the news, just the pity of earthquakes and hurricanes and the way the place has just been depleted of resources, but not really addressing the cause of how they've been
Yeah.
uprooted. And it's literally nations like, for example, right now the United States was one of them who had a great part in it, and also France who blackmailed them. Like,
Right. Yeah, yeah.
so
Yeah, so France had them pay, like I said, like since 1825, what do they call it? Some kind of a independence debt. Like basically they were like, okay, you can remain independent if you just pay this fine because we
wow.
lost a lot of money during your whole revolution. But at the same time, on top of that, that Haiti was paying this debt in order to remain independent. So that way, France is not going to continue sending
Yeah.
boats and stuff. Countries throughout the world were not acknowledging Haiti as a country. So they
Mm.
weren't allowing Haiti to participate in some sense of globalization or in like they were always ignored to
So they were like, they didn't have a chance.
no, that's the reason why Haiti stayed so poor because they weren't able like nope, you're not counted as the United States did it, Spain,
Mm. But
um
even Caribbean, because in Commonwealth, as
yes.
they would call it, I mean, I think to this day, if you are Haitian, you have a Haitian passport, you need a visa to visit other Caribbean countries. Most ridiculous thing ever. But
Right. I
that's the
think it
thing.
took a good 100 years to be officially like
Recognize.
recognized as a country to participate in like the unions and
Mm,
to be part of the financial or worldly banks. It took a long time for Hades to be part of all of this, which also
mm,
contributed to the poverty that you see and experience today. So when people are thinking Haiti, like Haitian have paid a huge price, not just financially, but
Yeah.
mentally, physically as well. Because you have to think, to I don't think Haitians or slaves wanted to get to where they wanted to be. It's known that people like Louverture wanted to negotiate, not to get to that point, or
Mm.
right to freedom, because he was learning from the French Revolution. And the
Mm-hmm.
thing is to get to that point where it does something psychologically to, hey, by any means that I'm also going to kill women and children for my freedom.
Yeah.
That does something
That
psychologically
messes you up.
to a whole entire generation, right? And that
Yeah.
gets followed generation after generation. So
Yeah. Which
there's,
is why we have that issue of transgenerational trauma, is what they
yes,
call it.
that's
Big,
right. The
big
trauma
thing.
from slavery, the trauma to have killed other human beings for your freedom.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And on top of that, now you're having countries who are not acknowledging that you are a independent country and is not allowing you to participate,
Yeah,
right?
that's a lot. That's like that's like you know how right now we're in this whole talk about like race and in every aspect it's being spoken about.
Yeah.
I really think that a conversation that needs to be had, especially among Caribbean countries, is the way that Haiti has been underrated. So we can go to the walks, we can go to all of those things and protest about police brutality, but we really need to look at what's in our backyard that we haven't addressed,
Yes.
because we have a lot of work to do, and it makes no sense just looking towards one thing being fixed and then you're completely ignoring all these different things that have been as a result of white supremacy and slavery, from colorism, all of the things you mentioned, specifically with what happened to Haiti. They're literally like the lowest of the lowest in terms of how they're treated as people on a whole. Like you weren't even recognized as someone or a country to be given certain rights. So
Yeah, for sure. And
yeah.
that's why, it always saddens me, when I move, I'm born and raised in Montreal. I grew up in Montreal, so the predominantly huge population of Haitians.
Hmm.
But when I moved to Toronto and meeting other people from the Caribbean, like Jamaica, Trinidad, I remember in my youth being always surprised when I'd say my heritage and my background is Haitian,
Hmm.
that they were like, Haiti, where is that? And it always saddened me because I'm like, are you serious?
Yes.
You know what
Yes.
I mean? But understanding your history, you realize it's by design that you don't.
Yes.
It's by design. They tried to erase us,
Erase your
to not allow
existence.
us to
Yeah.
be right. That people to the point where when I say, oh, it's right next to Dominican Republic, and I've had people say, what? No. Are you
Yeah.
sure? Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
But it's that deep. It's that deep rooted. It's by
Yeah.
design that we weren't added in history books, that
Hmm.
you had to learn from other Haitians about the revolution. And so when I see what's going on now, and when people tell me things like protests don't work, it deeply affects me because I am a living proof that protest works.
Yeah.
I am a living proof that my existence is the very thing that you say does not work. It's not true. I'm here for this very reason.
Hmm.
And so, or when they say there's a right way and the wrong way, when you're so
Yeah.
desperate, I think about my ancestors and the sacrifice, like I said, that they made physically, emotionally, and mentally for
So
me
that
to
we could
be
be
here,
free. Yeah.
right, is huge. It's
Yeah.
so there's a lot of lessons in why learning your history is important, so that way
Hmm.
it doesn't happen again for the future. And so there's a lot of things that I see today resonates closely to me, and it just keeps making me think of my ancestors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Well,
there's
huh?
a reason why. So the I guess in this conversation is like, it's learning that by learning in history, the reasons why a certain country or a certain culture or a certain food, how a certain, way of thinking or how people move, it all has to do with the history, and it's
Mm-hmm.
important to learn so that you know in this question, why is Haiti poor? Well, because of this kind of history.
History, exactly. So, all my Haitians out there,
Yes.
I hope that this was it made an impact for you as a person, that if you grew up being afraid or ashamed to be called Haitian, this should be the only validation that you need to know that you came from a set of ancestors that were very strong individuals. They persevered. You have their bloods running through your vein. There's nothing that you can't do in this life, but definitely do not ever give up your roots and your culture to fit in. It's not worth it. Be
Can I
proud.
Yes, and can I just add a great just if anyone is very interested to learn more, there's an amazing book called The Black Jacobin. It's
Hmm.
a book by C.L.R. James, and it has everything you need to know from Toussaint Louverture and the San Domingo Revolution. That was another name, San Domingue or San
Hmm.
Domingo. That was the name of Hispaniola Revolution. It was written in 1938 by, actually, he's a Trinidadian historian, and that's CLR James. And so it has all the history of the Haitian Revolution
Wow.
from 1791, starting with Boukman and
Hmm.
Cecile, and to 1804. It's the starter book if you want to know about the
I'm
Haitian Revolution.
definitely copying that book. So thanks for that plug.
Yeah,
I'm definitely getting that book.
definitely.
All right. Well, for more videos like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on your post notifications. We have videos like this every single Thursday at noon. New country, new topic, and vibes as usual. Thank you so much, Shirley, for being here with me. And do
Thank you for
not
having me.
forget, don't forget to go check out her podcast. They will be linked in the description box below. Go ahead and check out her material as well. As you can see from today's talk, that she is a person that you want to listen to and learn from. So definitely great resource here. Check her out. Don't forget to do road and do things. And until next time, Maggie is out.